15 minutes. Just gone past 1300 hours GMT. And we're coming to you live from the studios of Joy 99.7 FM right here in Accra. Kokomlemle on Fanofa Road to be precise. Oh, I look forward to Tuesday afternoons. Okay, so this is the Executive Lounge. It's your thought leadership show with me, the Rainmaker, Inshira Adu. And my guest today is a man who's no stranger to the Executive Lounge. We featured him on the TV edition and played back on radio before. And we did promise that we will grab him a second time and just plunder his brain. Maric Kofi Ghan is an author, a chartered accountant, a development practitioner, and a passionate Ghanaian. He's so passionate that this is his favorite music. He's wondering how I got to know this. Well, we're going to start off with a Bob Marley track, and then we'll jump into the conversation. All right. This music is so good we could play it all afternoon. But as you know, this is your thought leadership show. And by all standards, Bob Marley's reggae music and lyrics is an example of thought leadership. But let me welcome my guest to the show this afternoon, Maric Kofi Ghan.
Yes, sir.
Always a pleasure to catch up with you.
Always a pleasure to be here.
How are you?
I'm great.
So, we're going to jump into, I want to borrow your thoughts on development.
Right.
I mean, you practice it, me, I watch and get excited. But let me remind our listeners and our audience on Facebook Live that you can join the conversation. You can send us WhatsApp to 0244340437, and we should at some point open the phone lines. But here's what we're going to do today. We want to explore what is probably one of the most important things for a nation in development. And Maric,
yes, sir.
As a practitioner of development, you've worked with governments around the world. What three things, and I'm sure there's several of them, but if you had to, say you narrow it down to your three most important things, what would you say are key to a nation's development?
That's easy. Three things. Education,
Okay.
governance, industry.
Education, governance, industry. Okay. We'll touch on education last. Governance, I kind of get the sense why governance is important, but haven't we had, how many baton changes since 1992? To NDC, to MPP.
That's about it.
Yeah, they're about six.
Six, yeah.
Yeah, is that not governance?
That's politics.
Oh, so there's a difference between governance and politics.
Well, the thing for me, so politics is the bit about winning power and staying in power. Governance is about running a state, and the two are different.
So it's like doing the knocking and actually being married.
Yes, pretty much like that.
Okay.
So politics is the one that gets you in power, keeps you in power, makes you endearing to the populace and all that. And all
On
that.
a scale of 1 to 10,
Yes.
If you would look at Ghana from 1957 to date, governance-wise, where would you rate us? How well or how poorly have we done?
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best.
Yes.
Ooh, I'll put us at 5.
Wow, we've got quite a long way to go.
We've got a bit of way to go.
Okay.
I think what has happened over time is we've allowed politics to get in the way of governance. So we haven't really differentiated between the need to just win power and then manage state separately. We've kind of mixed the two.
Right.
So effectively, you find people who are more aligned politically, and that's all they know how to do politics, getting into the governance space. And if you mix those two, that's pretty much not the way it's supposed to go.
Okay. So the other thing is industry, and I've heard quite a lot of industry talk
sure you
lately, that we need to revive all the industries. There are countries that don't have industries per se, except maybe I'm thinking industries are factories with spires of smoke and all of that.
Look at industry this way. Industry creates. So if you're not creating anything, you don't have industry. It's as simple as that, really.
Okay. You must produce something
You
to
must
trade.
be creating. There's only 3 things you can create. You're either creating knowledge, you are creating a solution for people's needs, or you are creating political power.
Wow.
Globally. So if you're not creating any of these 3 things, then you really are not in industry.
Would you agree that education, and this is just my own theory, I don't know if
Right.
it's in any other book, but would you agree that education is probably the pivotal
Education
bit
is everything.
in this 3?
Education is everything. Look, when you ask me about the 3 things, I would have easily mentioned education, and education.
Wow. Okay.
But that is the bottom line. If you, how do I put this? Education is literally, okay. You have in front of you a microphone, right? Okay, it's made from some metals, right? Now, if I asked you what was that, you'd probably say it is a product or an equipment.
Yeah.
The truth actually is it is none of those. What you have in front of you is knowledge.
Okay. Okay. That's
All right.
been expressed in a finite product.
Right. So the ability of that microphone to stand in front of you and you use it for what you're using it for comes from your knowledge about the elements that make up that microphone, the capabilities of those elements, how they can be bonded together to come out with something like a microphone, the properties, it's everything around that. If you don't have that kind of knowledge, that microphone will not be in front of you. So we see all the things around us as products and all that, but actually it's education all around us. And if you don't get it that way, then you probably we don't understand what education really is. Education is about the ability to create. If your education is not helping you create, then I'm sad to say you don't really.
You know, it's quite interesting. A friend of mine actually, I think she said this on the Executive Lounge. Julieta Santi
Right.
said that, she's quite passionate about education, and she recounted an experience when her daughter went to school in the States, and that she did very well, except that the teachers, reported that she tended to not have confidence in her own abilities to the extent that she would keep checking for approval when she had done stuff.
Right.
Okay. And then you compare.
It's a cultural thing from here, isn't it?
I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
And then you get another example where a 15-year-old or say a 16-year-old, just satisfying the minimum, working age, a 16-year-old may be getting ready to move out of their home by the time they're 18. So they have a small job at the grocery store around the corner.
Right.
They're learning independence.
Right. Yeah.
Compared to a 30-year-old who still lives at home here. Is that something to do with how we educate here?
Education has components to it. So the social component or the cultural component is what you're talking about. And yes, it does play a pivotal role in because you can't practice or learn education in vacuum, isn't it? It's always going to be learned in a cultural setting. So you either find yourself in a situation where your cultural setting is in line with the education you're getting, or is out of sync with it. And it's only when it gets out of sync that you find this sort of like the example you just gave. That's a young kid who intellectually doesn't really have a problem, but there's a conflict of her cultural setting with the kind of knowledge she's gathering. So she may be gathering knowledge that tells her you need to be independent, you need to be creative, and all that. But that creativity is going to be stalled by the very same cultural setting she's grown up in. So she needs approval in order to be creative. Whereas in other settings, you are taught just go and be creative, and that aligns with the whole concept of learning to be creative. So, yes, it does have an impact on how we educate. And I must say, though, to be honest, I think we need to be blunt about this. And hopefully this thing gets to change in the future. Is that if you look around our educational setting, cultural component to it, I don't think we have the kind of cultural setting that says, parents need to be totally involved in the education of their kids. Sad to say, but for most parents, it's about going off, dropping the kids at school, they come back home, pay the fees, and you're done. But it's really about, okay, so you've been in school all day, you've got an education, how can we integrate that into the life you live outside of school? And if you're not getting that, then you grow up feeling there's a disconnect between what you're learning. And I like this example. I met this teacher once. She said, we need to stop teaching these kids A for apple, B for what? Something, C for, it's all these foreign things that a child never gets to connect with. So you teach a child A for apple, the child comes home.
Visualize.
They can't visualize. Well, they can see it on the board,
but they don't. They don't.
Right. So they come back home and it's totally disconnected from them. So there's no realism with the education they're getting.
So would you think we should rather do A for Alasa?
I wouldn't mind.
Because it's something that
I wouldn't mind, because they will see Alasa when they get home.
Anyway, it's 30 minutes past 1. This is the Executive Lounge. I'm in Shirado. My guest is Marek Kofi Gan. And so Marek has outlined 3 important things that no country can develop without: education, governance, and industry. And I've decided that we're going to focus on education for now, because then it gives me an opportunity to bring him back a couple more times so we can talk governance and then talk industry. But the instructions that we get giving and the way in which we're taught is no different from how the UK has taught its own. But the developmental index is different. Unless I'm quoting some very non-existent data.
I mean, look. Okay. There's two ways of learning. You're either learning what to think, or you're learning how to think. It's those two broad ways of thinking. One means that, so when you learn how to think, it means even if you're taking out of context, you can still function in the way you think because it's not straitjacket. When you learn what to think, you're told, okay, this happened at this time in the timeline of the years past, and we've come to this, and that's it. It ends there. Whereas the other version teaches you, all right, this is how it started. You need to figure out how to continue from here on. So you kind of open your mind automatically. I'll tell you very briefly something interesting about one of the things we're doing here, which is called the STEM. You've heard of STEM.
Science, technology, engineering.
Right.
Math.
See, this is how I view STEM from my experiences in other places. I don't think STEM is something that should be limited to science. I think STEM should be leveraged across every single subject. Because, see, all the elements of learning how to think are represented in science, are represented in STEM. So what I would have loved to see is to have a circumstance or situation in our learning structure where if you take a subject like, say, I don't know, give me any subject, nothing science, give me any subject. Art, okay. That's a difficult one, but but all right, let's take art. So we talk about STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. Now, it would have been great if you could take a subject like art and say, we're going to model the learning of art on the basis of STEM. So when you take art, you want to teach the science of art. What is it about art that makes it work? Okay, so you want to teach the science behind the pigmentation of the colors. So you opening somebody's mind beyond just taking a brush and then painting strokes.
So suddenly, STEM becomes a prism through which you filter everything.
A foundation on which every single subject is taught. So you take art, you want to learn the science behind the art. You want to teach students the engineering behind the art. So when you talk about engineering, you're talking about how engineering is all about building, isn't it?
That's
so
right.
You want to ask somebody as a student, okay, you're learning art this way. This is the way we've always brushed. What is the new way, learning the science behind it, that you can do art differently? What is a new way you can build art differently? Okay, that's the engineering component of it. And then you take technology. Let's take technology. You want to ask yourself or ask students, how can technology change the way we do art? And technology can change the way we do art. But if you don't start bringing that agenda forward in the learning structure.
Coloring book.
Right, you have a digital coloring book. Okay, would it surprise you that some kids have never seen a digital coloring book? But they will grow up, they will graduate from school, they will be expected to work in a 21st century organization which would require them to use all of that. I have talked to students who have studied accounting, raw accounting, and then you throw them into a firm and they know jack.
So there's a imbalance in the way we're doing things. Are we focusing too much on the theory, or are we focusing?
I think we're doing academics. They're two different things.
Schooling and education.
Yes.
Okay. So I have my small country called Inshiras Republic.
Okay.
I want you to work as my advisor on education because I want my people. I think that it's a little frustrating when you read wonderful stories about Ghanaians doing fantastic stuff around the world.
Right.
And I'm confident, and when I say this, I say it without a shadow or without fear of sounding aloof and arrogant. It is a fact. We're amongst the brightest
We
ever
are.
made on the planet.
Absolutely.
So, but why do we do this to ourselves? What is it that we're not doing right? Why do we have people who have to only leave the shores and embrace other cultures to shine?
And sure, the environment makes you. Every environment makes you. I mean, I went to the UK, and it's only when I entered into the University of Greenwich that I actually knew that I could be taught critical thinking. Like, you could actually be taught how to think critically. I used to think creative thinking and critical thinking were kind of like generic things. You either have it or you don't. You're born with it. But then I was taught how to think critically, and it's a whole thing. You get taught how to think critically, and then from then on, you actually realize, I can't think critically. The environment makes you. There's a lot of things that could and should be done to sort of expand the scope of our education. I don't know if you want us to list those, but there's quite a number of things. Look, we need to get a grip on our curriculum, the content of our curriculum. That's one I would always say any day. And here's where it starts for me. As it stands, we're quite isolated as a country. All right. We need to be asking ourselves, where's the world heading? Okay, a few things. One, we know we're in a knowledge age. That's very critical. We need to understand that and what the whole knowledge age thing is about. So we need to know where the country is headed, so where the world is headed. Then we need to ask ourselves, where in that new world that is being evolved do we want to position ourselves? It's all about positioning. Once we figure out where we want to be positioned in that world that is evolving, we need to be asking ourselves, how do we get there, and what is the knowledge we require to get there? It's only when we understand where we want to be positioned and the knowledge that is required to get there that we can actually backtrack and now say, you know what, then we need to shape our curriculum to sort of align with the education and the knowledge we need to get where we want to get to. Because otherwise we're just fingering ourselves in the dark, literally. Because, okay, so what if we ask somebody right now, where exactly is our education intended to position us? I don't think there will be an answer for that. There wouldn't be. And so the question then becomes, have we asked ourselves those critical questions? Where's the world heading? Where do we want to be positioned in that world? And what kind of knowledge and education do we need to get us there? I know Ghanaians like using Singapore as an example a lot, but here's one. When we're quick to jump and say, yeah, Singapore and Taiwan and South Korea and all that have been doing well on the PISA scores and all that. But these guys do things a bit differently. Okay, I'll tell you one thing they do quite differently is that industry plays a major role in the design of their curriculum.
So essentially, industry is working in tandem with academia.
Industry has to work in tandem with academia.
So you
because
don't have
at the end of the day,
situation.
these guys qualify from school. They're going to be taken into industry. The industry needs to determine where they are heading.
Who should make the first move? Because over here in Ghana,
It has to be collaborated.
You've heard people in industry say when the people come, they don't know anything. You have to train them all over again. How do we bridge that gap where industry is able to forecast where they want to go and put a demand on education to say, let's create
This
the people
kind of
who
people.
can drive this vision forward?
I do think it is possible for government to put those two together. It's sort of a marriage that has to be created. Okay. If we sit as it is, industry is going to say, oh, it's not our duty. They are the ones training the people. We are the ones just running industry. Academia is going to say, well, we need your support to make this happen. And so if we're not getting that support, how are we supposed to make that happen? Somebody needs to get up and say, you know what? You guys need to just get married.
And make it work.
And make it happen. Of course, there has to be incentives to make that happen. But I think once that marriage does critically happen, then we can begin to see some positive results from that. Because what tends to happen is that you see. So when I started practicing or studying accounting, for example, I chose accounting because it wasn't a big thing at the time. Yes, there were quite a number of people who had accounting qualifications, but it wasn't really a big thing. I chose that. When I came back 3 years later, almost everybody was studying SSC and CA and CMA and everything. Almost everybody. And I kind of asked myself, okay, it's possible that we need all these accountants in the system, but have we really stopped to ask what other areas within the business sector that we need other professions for? And are they being well met, or is the demand being well met by the supply? I don't think we do. So people come out of school and realize that the roles they have been educated for are either contracting or either become non-existent. I was talking to somebody. They said they wanted to become what's the name they call them, a travel agent. I said to the kid, dude, forget it, because
they want to be a travel agent.
They want to be a travel agent. I said that profession is dead. Even if it's a profession, it's dead. That's exactly what I said to him. I don't remember the last time I bought a ticket by walking into an office.
But what kind of worldview would inform an aspiration like that?
The worldview that understands.
Are we opening the minds of the young to greater possibilities in life so that they can aspire beyond wanting to be a travel agent?
Well, Inshira, when you're in school,
and no disrespect.
No disrespect to them. Absolutely, absolutely.
They're awesome people.
But the point I'm trying to make is this: see, if you are in school and you were told these are the various things you can become. When we were kids, you get asked, what do you want to become? Right.
Yeah.
That is influenced by a couple of things. One, chief amongst them, is those you see around you and what they are. The two is what you are told is possible. Okay. So I was in Germany about a year ago, and I went into this lab. So I was working for the EU. I went into this lab, and I actually found all these 17, 18, 19-year-olds. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Okay, the doctors were about 18, 20-year-olds who had their doctorates. And this is what they were doing. They were engineering genes. Okay, just like you program a computer, they were taking genes and they were engineering them, and they call them genetic engineers. And I'm like, I have never heard of that before.
And these are...
This is 20-year-olds.
20-year-olds?
Yeah, with doctorates. And then you come back to Ghana and you hear things like you can't write certain exams if you're a certain age.
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean? Or the kids in school don't even know that there is a possibility that if I study math, I can become X, Y, Z. All they know is that, when I was growing, chemistry used to be my favorite subject. I stopped chemistry at a point because I got scared. I returned away from Legon the first day I was sent to school. I literally got to Legon. The driver got me there, and I said, dude, let's go back. So we left. We went back home. And that's how come I started accounting. Because I understood at that level that when you study chemistry, and we used to call it raw chemistry then, if you study raw chemistry, the only thing you can become is a lecturer.
Wow.
So, kids need to be told what the possibilities are. They need to be shown the possibilities. They need to be engaged with the possibilities. Otherwise, they don't know what possibilities there are. Some of these kids, especially if you're not coming from a very well-to-do family where you probably even watch TV and all that, you wouldn't know some of these things, So they need to know what possibilities there are. And if we don't show them the possibilities, they can't aspire to them.
Right. Mark, let me ask you about this. And this is from a statement you just made earlier.
Right.
That, people have to be taught how to think. Excuse me. People have to be taught how to think,
right?
And not what to think. And so, essentially, it's not a one-size-fits-all situation.
Not really, no.
Yeah. Would you turn all my polytechnics into universities?
I mean, that's a very, very dicey question. I mean, I don't think it's what we call it. I think it's what they deliver.
Right.
That's the way I see education. It's what it's delivering. So you can have an academic stream, which is what in most countries is the is a university. So that's purely academic. Then you can have the technical stream, which is usually what they call the polytechnics or the technical universities and all that. I understand why you would ask that question, because culturally we look down on polytechnics as though they were less.
Which is quite strange, because the statistics indicate that Switzerland has a majority
right,
of their educated class
coming out of
right, and they're amongst the most paid.
Right.
They're very well
Even in
paid
the
people.
Asian countries, a lot of the leadership are people with engineering.
So again,
outlooks.
how did we come to not respect
you know what? I wish I knew
the
that
thing that builds the nation?
I wish I knew that. But I think over time, we've never really had a lot of technical people being up there, if you get what I mean. It's all an inspirational, snowball effect, isn't it? I don't want to mention a certain profession, but if you have a certain set of profession, majority of them running the show, kids look up to those guys and they want to be like them. Okay? If you have engineers wowing the whole world, and we're proud of them wowing the whole world. If I was a kid, I would love if you put a kid down right now and you gave him Bill Gates and you also gave him, somebody other than an engineer or a software engineer. That kid understands that Bill Gates has done a lot for this world. He's inspired by it. The chances are that he's going to choose that he wants to be like him. So it's a whirlpool, or it's a snowball effect. I don't think we've hyped or highlighted the impact of our technical folks enough.
So we're not telling our own stories. We're not telling
We
the
are
right
not
stories.
telling our own stories. And so they're not inspiring enough, and so they don't trickle down. Nobody wants to be a failure or anything that looks like a failure.
So I think it was a World Economic Forum about 4 years ago indicated that there were going to be quite a number of jobs that will not be in existence some 15, 20 years from now. And I'm sure, you've got your fingers on the pulse, and you're not avoiding this question. You will answer this question. Are we heading in the right direction as a nation? Africa's population is going to more than double by 2050. Some jobs will be gone by then. We'll have a population glut. Could be a time bomb, could be a blessing. Are we in the right direction to reap the most opportunities that presents us? And you are speaking as a Ghanaian. Are we going in that direction?
Not exactly.
Who are you afraid of?
I'm not afraid. No,
speak your mind. No, but seriously, are you sure we're heading in the right direction?
I don't think we are. I genuinely don't think we are. If I'm to be blunt about it, I genuinely don't think we are. I know you've mentioned a few things about there's going to be a population boom, which is it's already the case. We have about more than 40% of our population being youth anyway. We're not in isolation, so we're going to get caught up with the whole knowledge economy, which is building around us, and it's going to decide everything going forward. See, I think we have a phenomenal advantage, is that because of our youth.
Okay.
As to whether we are equipping them to be able to create their own opportunities is where the big question lies. That's where the big question lies. Now, I was thinking through this a couple of weeks back, and I said to myself, you know what? You're right when you say it's almost a time bomb, not to scare people away, but intellectually it is a time bomb, because you've got people who are already out of school. out of the stages where they could pick up some forward knowledge, but they haven't. And so when that time comes, it's going to be quite. Look, here's what I think we should do. Okay, I wonder if it is worth saying, but here's what I think we should do. At this point, we can salvage the future at least, or some part of the future. Okay. It would be good. It would be good if at this point we have students being fully plugged into technology, because it is what is going to drive everything 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line. I know we're talking about, what's it called, agriculture and all that, but I can tell you this for a fact. Agriculture going forward is not going to be driven by manual labor. It's going to be driven by technology. And if we can't get that right now, then we're going to fail. I think we can start plugging our kids into that kind of education. And it would have been good to have fantastically, things around. People say coding. I think is beyond coding, but the general insight and depth of knowledge into technology at this stage in our university should be paramount priority, at least to salvage some of them. I do think can I just say that look, let me just put it this way. It would take the best to teach the rest.
Well, I mean,
it will.
It will, because
it should.
Because that's what works elsewhere.
That's what works. It would take the best to teach the rest. Okay, this whole thing where becoming a teacher is more or less like a thing of last resort has to cease. We've got to equip those who are willing and very diligent about teaching, and there are some amazingly passionate people out there, but we need to support them. Look, we don't have, people talk about, like, again, I go back to this whole Singapore thing. Within the space of 8 years, Singapore spent about $100 and something million on research, educational research. What were they looking for? They were trying to figure out the best ways to teach so that knowledge stays. And they have this program that they call Teach Less, Learn More. Okay, in which they apply technology and in-depth research to ensure that with a minimal effort, they can transmit practical knowledge in the most shortest possible time. Okay, so what they're doing is not, it's not a fluke. It didn't just happen. It took people sitting at a table and figuring out, how do we get this done? Okay, and I think these are the lines we need to be applying rather than just, shouting about it. The curriculum we have now, I know there's some curriculum changes happening. I'm yet to see those. But it'd be good to know if the curriculum we have now actually has the capability to position us anywhere specific on the world scene.
Well, one thing I know for a fact is that there's some technology being introduced right from the basic level.
Okay. Is that just learning, having a computer, or it's actually learning something?
Well, I don't know how it's going to be rolled out.
Right.
But in terms of what's going to be taught, there's civics or some semblance of civics, social studies, but there's science, math, and technology. Which is a little heartwarming, but of course we have to wait to see
how it
pans out. Yes.
Interesting. Interesting.
So it's 5 minutes to the top of the hour. We're going to be parting ways in a moment, but Marek, you have to promise to be ready to come back. You mentioned 3 things. We've only talked about 1 today, and even that, there's plenty more that we haven't gone into yet. I know that you're a consultant. You're just like lawyers. You don't speak unless you've signed an engagement letter and there's a check coming your way.
No, I always speak.
Okay,
I always speak.
Okay, right. He said it that he always speaks. So you will speak in a moment. As we wrap up, final words from you. If you should speak to the wind about where we're going, what two things should we do if we really want to rescue the future?
Education-wise?
Yes.
I would say get industry into bed with academia. And I would say shape up our curriculum to reflect where we want to be positioned in the world. We have to. I mean, it's not like we have a choice around that.
How do we shape it up? How will we even know where we are?
Okay. Finding out where we are is not difficult. Finding out where the world is going is not difficult. The difficult bit is, how do we want to get there? I don't think it's a problem determining the education we need to position ourselves where we want. Okay, so take for example, we want to be the biggest shot when it comes to technology within agriculture because it's already evolving. Even here locally, some guys are doing some amazing things with agricultural technology. We already have agriculture. It's easy to get the technology element of it and then have a boom throughout Africa. Is that what we want to do? If that is what we want to position ourselves, if that's what the strength we want to have, or we want to be known for that, then we should start, leveraging that in our educational cycle. I mean, a lot of these guys I know who are doing agricultural technology actually came out and were doing that on their own. They didn't have to go through it in a formal way. But something at the top needs to drive that. That's what I mean. We need to say, you know what, here is where we want to be. And so we need to drive that. Yeah. Okay, there's a lot of manufacturing that's going to be happening. We've talked about we want to go into industry. The question is, do we have industrial knowledge?
That's a good question to end this part of our conversation on. But big thank you to you, Mary Kofi Gan, chartered accountant, author, consultant, development practitioner, and over and above all things, a very passionate Ghana man from the coast of Volta region. It's a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you, Inshira. Always a pleasure.
Typically, I would give you 5 things to take away, but trust me, the whole of the 44 minutes we've been talking is everything to take away. But let me sum things up for you. That we must have a clear plan where we want to be and put in place the things that will take us there. Opportunities abound. We must put the best foot forward in terms of who teaches the next generation. And it's time for us to say goodbye. And I think I should just leave you with another one of his favorites. It's not my fault he likes Bob Marley. It's been the Executive Lounge. I'm Inshira Addo. Go forward, make rain. Shalom. The news is up next.